Howdy folks, Jambareeqi here. Today marks the 10th anniversary of my YouTube channel, and I want to celebrate the occasion with something special. You all know that I've been a huge Simpsons fan since I was a kid. It's a show that shaped a lot of my taste and humour, plus helped me through difficult times. Many Simpsons fans like to divide the show into the classic era and the modern age, with most of us considering the classic episodes to be the golden age of The Simpsons, because that's when the show's writing was at its best. However, not every classic Simpsons episode is peak quality. There are some duds here and there. In this video, I'm going to be revealing my picks for the top 5 best and worst classic Simpsons episodes. I asked my fans which seasons count as the classic era, and they voted for seasons 1 to 8. Now, I did make a top 5 Simpsons episode video in my early days of YouTube, but that was a rush job that I regretted so much I took it down a week later. One of the rare times that I deleted one of my videos. So just disregard those picks if you ever saw that video. Anyway, let the countdown begin, starting with the worst. Go! Brother, can you spare 2 dimes? In the season 2 episode Brother, Where Art Thou?, Homer learns that he has a rich half-brother called Herb Powell. Herb hires Homer to design his company's next car, so that it can appeal to America's everyman. Homer's reluctant and unconfident heading the project, but Herb insists that Homer can pull it off. Unfortunately, Homer's car is a disaster, and Herb's company goes bankrupt. Herb, angry at Homer, decides to cut off his half-brother forever. In Brother, Can You Spare 2 Dimes?, Mr. Burns learns that Homer's sperm has been turned sterile by his plant's radiation. Burns bribes Homer off with a fake reward of $2,000, but the family can't decide what to spend their new riches on. Meanwhile, Herb has been living on the streets ever since his company went bust. One day though, he comes up with an idea for a brand new invention, a baby translator. He then finds out about Homer's $2,000 and heads to the Simpsons' home. Herb still resents Homer but wants to convince his half-brother to fund his baby translator. What I dislike the most about this episode is how entitled and guilt-free it makes Herb out to be. Yes, Homer's car design is what caused Herb's company to go bankrupt, but Herb is not some innocent victim of Homer's mistake. In Brother, Where Art Thou?, Herb ignored Homer's lack of qualifications, gave Homer a sense of false confidence instead of training him, shut down all of his company's safer projects to prioritize Homer's car, never ever checked up on the progress of Homer's design, and Herb also pretended nothing was wrong when his staff gave him red flags about Homer's creative decisions.
I'm glad you're nervous, because that means we're on the right track. All right. Okay, this is what you're gonna do. You're gonna hang up, call me back, and say the exact opposite of everything you just said.
Yes, Homer designed the final product, but Herb wasn't some bystander. He was the CEO of a company. He actively chose to hire Homer and shut out all of the warning signs. He could have closed the project any time. In Brother, Can You Spare 2 Dimes?, Herb refuses to take any responsibility at all as a failed CEO, pins all the blame on Homer, and feels the right to punch his half-brother multiple times.
So many conflicting emotions. How to express them?
Herb? No one ever stands up for Homer, or criticizes Herb for his part in his company's downfall. It's really frustrating to me.
Why didn't you write, Unky Herb?
Hey, if I wrote to you, what was I supposed to say? Dear Lisa, last night I used a rat for a pillow thanks to your pop.
I see your point.
Now, don't get me wrong, there are reasons why this episode is only at number 5. Not only is it fantastic to hear Danny DeVito reprise his voice as Herb, one of the best Simpsons guest castings ever.
It's a baby translator. It measures the pitch, the frequency, and the urgency of a baby's cries. Then it tells whoever's around, in plain English, exactly what the baby is trying to say.
But I really do find a lot of charm and creativity to Herb's baby translator invention. It's a cool idea and I find it fun to watch it come together.
Now let's see. What could you be trying to say? Nothing downstairs. You just took a nap.
I want to suck your nose.
But I just can't fully enjoy this episode because of how it frames Herb as some helpless victim. He's a bad businessman who made a terrible reckless decision and never hit the brake pedal. How could this episode been better? I think that's simple. Replace Herb Powell with a different character. Someone who really was an innocent victim of Homer's incompetence that we can feel sorry for. Sure, this would take away the brother drama that makes this episode special, but I'd be willing to lose that aspect for a more sympathetic guest character. Burns Verkaufen der Kraftwerk. Mr. Burns longs for a more carefree life, so he decides to sell his power plant to some German businessmen. The German takeover of the plant results in many changes, including Homer being fired from his job. I've always found this to be the most boring classic Simpsons episode. I didn't have fun watching it as a kid, and I still don't enjoy it as an adult. The episode has this gloomy vibe to it because everything is constantly going downhill, from Homer selling his Burns Worldwide stock at the wrong time and losing out on $5,200, to the Simpsons becoming dismally poor thanks to the Germans firing Homer. A lot of the episode is just formal meetings and interviews, which are broken up by Burns' adventures, but when I look back on the episode, all I remember are characters sat face to face in stuffy corporate rooms. It gives the episode a very sterile atmosphere.
You've been safety inspector for 2 years. What initiatives have you spearheaded in that time?
All of them?
Not even the comedy can save this episode for me. Heck, I'd say that this is one of the least funny classic Simpsons episodes. While I do appreciate the episode's attempt to counter Homer's misfortune with humour, only 1 or 2 jokes out of the whole episode actually make me laugh, which isn't a great sign when Golden Age Simpsons usually has such high standards. Now yes, this episode does have a few pros, like the Land of Chocolate, one of the best Homer Simpson dream sequences ever made. Plus I like that Mr. Burns goes out to live his best life, only to be mocked and ridiculed by the public. You'd expect him to change his ways to restore his reputation, but he's far more concerned that Springfield no longer fears him. It's a refreshing twist on the billionaire learns a lesson story. Other than that though, Burns for Kaufman Kraftwerk is so dull and monotonous that I often forget that it even exists. How could it have been better? Well, I think that the German businessmen should have been far more eccentric, and the episode should have had more fun with how they changed the power plant. Instead of boring meetings, force the employees to follow Bavarian customs, and be tested on fluent German. Go crazy with how this takeover switches things up at the plant. It's a shame that the episode holds back, because it could have been far more entertaining than it ended up being. Dog of Death. In this episode, Santa's little helper could die from a twisted stomach, so the family have to give up their expenses to afford their dog's operation. The operation is a success, but the Simpsons end up resenting Santa's little helper, so the greyhound runs from home and is adopted by Mr. Burns. I don't like throwing this word around, but it's the best way to describe this episode. Depressing. Even as a kid I didn't like this one, and I often skipped it when watching Simpsons DVDs. I mean, this is an episode where a beloved animated dog is suffering from a twisted stomach, all while his family obsess over winning the lottery. Then when they finally give him attention, we get the sad news that he'll have to be left to die.
Honey, $750 is a lot of money. We really can't afford this operation.
You're gonna just let him die?
I know you're upset.
Darn right I'm upset!
Sure, they're eventually able to afford his operation, but then the Simpsons just end up hating Santa's little helper. Look, I understand their frustrations, but it's such a turn of character after they were so desperately eager to save his life. And these sacrifices seem worth giving up for a family pet. To make things even more bleak, Santa's little helper is forced into becoming an attack dog for Mr. Burns. This cute pup, who has already gone through a life-threatening illness and been neglected by his family, is now an empty shell of himself.
Boca, boca, boca. Boca, boca, boca. Excellent.
Now, don't get me wrong, the Simpsons do later end up feeling remorse, and it's very sweet that Bart has to say, "I love you, boy," to click Santa's little helper out of his brainwashing. There's also some great jokes here and there, the kind of memorable gags you'd expect from Season 3's quality of comedic writing.
If you were 17, we'd be rich. But no, you had to be 10.
It's just, I can't watch this episode without mainly feeling heartbreak and sorrow. I'm totally 100% down for a dramatic episode of The Simpsons, but Dog of Death leans way more to being sad than profound. How could have this episode been better? It's tricky, but I'd say that the episode should have just picked one Santa's little helper conflict and let that be the focus. Either make it about The Simpsons working to save Santa's little helper's life, or Bart getting Santa's little helper back from Mr. Burns. This would have really lightened the load for the episode's drama. Secrets of a Successful Marriage. Homer doesn't like how everyone thinks he's stupid and slow, so he volunteers to become a marriage counselling teacher for an adult education school. Unfortunately, he's not very good at it and keeps boring his students, so he starts telling secrets about his marriage to make his class more entertaining. When Marge finds out about this, she kicks Homer out for betraying her trust. I feel like this is going to be one of my more controversial choices, because I know how much people love classic episodes about Marge and Homer's relationship, but I don't think that this one has aged very well. For starters, I found Homer to be at his most despicable and selfish in this episode. This wasn't a whoopsie-daisy mistake or one of Homer's clumsy accidents. He intentionally exposed Marge's most personal and private secrets to the whole of Springfield, just to keep his students interested.
Now, the wife of this couple has an interesting quirk in the bedroom. It seems she goes wild with desire if her husband nibbles on her elbow.
This isn't a one-time slip-up either. After finding out, Marge made it very clear that she didn't want him to share their intimate secrets anymore, and he still ended up doing it again. If my partner did that to me, I'd find it horrifying, and I would cut them off forever. No matter how disheveled and sad Homer looked, I never felt sorry for him or hoped he'd get back together with Marge. He also makes zero effort to understand Marge's feelings, and spends the whole episode hoping to manipulate her back into his life. If anything, I found his behaviour to be more creepy and disturbing than funny or sympathetic.
I hope we'll always be together. Together. Together.
But the thing that I dislike the most about this episode is its final conclusion. At the end, Homer comes to an epiphany. He realises that he's completely dependent on Marge to function in life, and it's this reliance on her that he can bring to their marriage. Sort of his own take on I can't live without you.
Marge, I need you more than anyone else on this entire planet could possibly ever need you. I need you to take care of me, to put up with me. And most of all, I need you to love me.
I'm sorry, but I don't find this romantic or sweet. It's just immature. Homer is confessing that he sees Marge as his mum to coddle him, not his grown-up wife that he promised to cherish and protect. It's a really unhealthy approach to marriage that screams many, many red flags. Marge and Homer only get back together because Marge pities him, and the script is making her fall for Homer's poor excuses. Plus, Homer only starts to respect Marge's feelings from now on because he's scared of being kicked out again, not because he's developed a better sense of empathy for his wife.
Marge, look at me. We've been separated for a day, and I'm as dirty as a Frenchman. In another few hours, I'll be dead. I can't afford to lose your trust again.
I really don't see this as a happy ending. That being said, this is actually the funniest episode on my worst list. Out of every bad episode on this top 5, I found myself laughing the most at this one, the best parts coming from Mo, who gives us some hilarious and memorable laughs.
Alright, here's the 411, folks. Say some gangster is dissing your fly girl. You just give him one of these. Ooh, hey, ooh.
So how could have this episode been better? Well, I would make a big change. I think that Homer shouldn't have dragged Marge into his teaching antics. Have Homer teach something serious like science or English, with the humour coming from Homer making up facts, only for everything to backfire when his students get examined. Now that Fox have started introducing animated married couples that are healthy and mature but still funny, episodes like this really show how outdated the whole put-upon wife and reckless selfish husband shtick really is. My Sister, My Sitter. After obsessing over the Babysitter Club books, Lisa decides to become a babysitter. She does a great job looking after kids and finds a lot of success doing the job. When Homer and Marge plan to attend a fancy boardwalk party, they decide to leave Lisa in charge as babysitter. This angers Bart, who decides to ruin his sister's babysitting career by being a bratty jerk. I'm just gonna say it, this is a really bad episode. It was not hard to pick which episode represents classic Simpsons at their lowest point. The episode actually starts off kind of cute and wholesome, as we watch Lisa looking after less developed kids with a lot of maturity and responsibility, proving to adults that she's a big girl for her age. Plus the episode does find some humour in her babysitting adventures.
Don't worry, a mop is no more harmful than a ladybug. They're gonna get eaten alive in middle school.
However, once she babysits Bart, everything goes downhill. We're basically watching a boy torture his sister as punishment for being more mature than him. Yes, most of Bart's antics are played for laughs, but I just mainly found it sad and frustrating watching Lisa being driven insane by a bullying brother.
What are you doing now? I'm banging my head. I'm gonna make the lump even bigger.
When Bart injures himself until unconscious, Lisa tries to get him to the hospital, but she's spotted at the boardwalk party, where she's publicly humiliated for her babysitting skills. Springfield's parents have been gushing over Lisa's babysitting talents this whole episode, but the moment she's framed by Bart, they're quick to judge that she's awful. Oh, that's fair. Sure, Bart says sorry the next day, but it's a very soft apology, and he never goes out of his way to save Lisa's reputation by taking the blame. That's the thing. Everything that goes wrong this night, it's all Bart's fault. None of the bad things that happen are the fault of Lisa's babysitting choices. It's so cruel and unfair how the episode makes Lisa pay for Bart's childish pettiness.
911.
Hello, this is Lisa Simpson.
Simpson? Look, we've already been out there tonight for a cysterectomy, a case of severe butt rot, and a leprechaun bite. How dumb do you think we are?
Whenever I finish this episode, I have to ask myself, what was the point? Why did this 8-year-old gifted and intelligent girl who proved her babysitting abilities have to be punched down so much? It's not that Lisa needs to be humbled. I mean, she never gets cocky as a successful babysitter. She just gets on with the job. Sure, she's a little condescending to Bart, but Bart hasn't exactly proved that he can act his age. And she's just treating him like any other kid she's babysat.
You should wash up for dinner. To make it fun, you can use the Mr. Bubble. It'll be like giving your fingers a bubble bath. You are so dead.
Even after Lisa is outed as a bad babysitter, all the parents are still happy to hire her the next day. So all this knocking down of her pride was for nothing. How could have this episode been better? Well, it could have gone one of two ways. 1. Focus more on teaching Bart to be a more mature boy, so he can convince Lisa that she doesn't need to babysit him, with the laughs coming from how hard he tries to prove his maturity. A bit like in the episode New Kid on the Block. Then by the episode's end, he finally understands what it means to be mature and responsible. 2. If the episode wanted Lisa to learn the harsh reality of being a preteen babysitter, she could have babysat someone else's troubled kid. A badly behaved child who isn't out for Lisa, they're just a problematic kid. Plus, have her own overconfidence lead to all her babysitting mistakes, and eventually learning that being an 8-year-old babysitter has its limits. As it is though, My Sitter, My Sister is a difficult watch. Sure, it has its funny highlights, but it leans way more to being unnecessarily cruel. Right, time to reveal my choices for the top 5 best. Moaning Lisa. Lisa has been feeling very sad lately, so much so that she sees no point in doing anything. Her parents are stumped over how to cheer Lisa up, but luckily, she befriends a talented busking jazz musician, Bleeding Gums Murphy, who encourages her to use music to vent her feelings. I never expected myself to put a Season 1 episode on my best list, because many agree that the first season is when The Simpsons were still finding its footing and hadn't hit its stride yet. But here we are. I can't help but really relate to Lisa in this episode. Her sadness is brought on by the crushing reality of life, from knowing that there's suffering out there, to the mundane boredom of her school's creative stifling.
I'm wailing out for the homeless family living out of its car. The Iowa farmer whose land has been taken away by unfeeling bureaucrats. The West Virginia coal miner coughing
Well,
up...
that's all fine and good, but Lisa, none of those unpleasant people are going to be at the recital next week.
I've had these feelings again and again myself, so I find it easy to put myself in Lisa's shoes.
I'm just wondering, what's the point? Would it make any difference at all if I never existed? How can we sleep at night when there's so much suffering in the world?
But I also like that the episode balances out its bleak storyline with the introduction of the charismatic Bleeding Gums, a highly skilled musician who has his own problems, but he still takes the time to teach Lisa the power of the blues.
I have problems too.
Well, I can't help you, kid. I'm just a terrific horn player with tons of soul, but I can jam with you.
Okay.
Homer and Marge might mean well as parents in this episode, but they're clearly struggling, mainly because of their own insecurities. Homer doesn't know what to say to Lisa, and feels bruised as a father after losing to Bart at a video game 47 times, while Marge's old-fashioned style of parenting isn't working, because her mother taught her to hide her emotions and pretend to put on a smile, which is a deeply unhealthy way to handle sadness. However, when Marge sees Lisa pretending to be happy at school for her, she realizes that her mum was wrong and tells her daughter this.
Lisa, I apologize to you. I was wrong. I take it all back. Always be yourself. You want to be sad, honey? Be sad. We'll write it out with you. And when you get finished feeling sad, we'll still be there. From now on, let me do the smiling for both of us.
This is perhaps my favourite Marge Simpson moment of all time, because she admits that she was at fault and says exactly what Lisa needs to hear. It makes me tear up every time.
I said you could stop smiling, Lisa.
I feel like smiling.
Sure, Moaning Lisa's animation is rough around the edges, but I think there's a humble charm to Season 1's art style that makes me feel warm and fuzzy. More importantly though, I really respect the lengths this episode goes to explore the depth and complexity of childhood sadness, all while showing that kids have every right to express how they feel. Black Widower. In this episode, Aunt Selma ends up falling in love with her recently released sideshow Bob, and the two decide to get married. While most people believe that this is an honest marriage, Bart remains mistrustful and suspects that Bob hasn't changed his criminal ways. It turns out that Bob plans to murder Selma via a gas explosion on the night of the couple's honeymoon, and Bart has to be the one to save his aunt before it's too late. Now, I'm sure that a lot of you are surprised that I didn't pick Cape Fear as my favourite Sideshow Bob episode. Don't get me wrong, Cape Fear is a classic and I love it. But when push comes to shove, I actually prefer Black Widower. I think what appeals to me the most about this episode is its amazingly well constructed mystery story. You see, professional crime author Thomas Chastain was hired to help plot this episode, and his talented fingerprints gave this episode some sophisticated mystery writing. The episode takes place at a point in the Sideshow Bob saga where we know he's capable of committing crime, but we can also buy that he's maybe changed at this stage. So we're left to ponder his intentions throughout the episode. Does he actually really love Selma and is Bart just being paranoid? Or is this ex-convict out for blood?
Do you, Bob, take Selma to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, till death do you part?
I do.
Heck, Bob even drops his act at one point to argue with Selma about MacGyver being a bad TV show, a plot point that could be read as either Bob putting his pride before his crime, which is in character, or a genuine marital disagreement between a newly wedded couple with differences.
Very well, Selma. Whenever you watch MacGyver, I'll take a vigorous constitutional and return more in love with you than ever.
Oh, Bob.
I really love how all the clues to the truth are peppered naturally into the script. What might seem like a throwaway line or a silly joke could actually be a piece of the bigger puzzle. You can totally tell that the Simpsons staff trusted viewers to spot these hints and connect the dots.
I wanted a room with a fireplace, you brainless luggage monkey! Like the one in your brochure! Oh, Selma, dear. I was just chatting with my good friend, Dennis.
Once Bob makes it crystal clear to the audience that he plans to kill Selma, things actually get even more interesting, because now we have to work out his murder methods and get to see his villainous intentions from his perspective.
Bob, one of my fillings fell out.
Even murder has its ugly side.
Black Widower isn't just a great crime mystery episode though. Please don't assume that I only like it for its dark edge, because it's still full of your usual Simpsons wit and humour, with the wedding sequence alone giving us a whole array of back-to-back very funny gags.
If he was gonna commit a crime, would he have invited the #1 cop in town? Now, where did I put my gun? Oh, yeah. I set it down when I got a piece of cake.
I know some Simpsons fans will find it blasphemy for me to choose this episode over Cape Fear, but at the end of the day, this is my list. Separate vocations. When the kids at Springfield Elementary take a standardized vocational test, Bart is told that he can be a police officer, but Lisa's result is a homemaker. In response to their results, Bart becomes the school's hall monitor, and Lisa rebels against the adults who crushed her dreams. I honestly think that this is the most underrated Simpsons episode ever made, and it baffles me that more people don't talk about it. The Simpsons, like many animated sitcoms, follows a weekly formula, but this episode shakes things up by switching stuff around. We get to see Bart's more authoritarian side, and Lisa embraces the role of a troublemaker. What's weird is that both clearly enjoy their alternate lifestyles. They genuinely want to live these new lives. Bart sees the power in fascist authority, and Lisa gets to slack off instead of pressuring herself to do her best. What I admire the most about this episode, though, is how it ends up being this very truthful commentary on how adults can affect children's self-confidence, and the importance that grown-ups play when it comes to encouraging children. Most adult figures in Lisa's life tell her that she can't be a jazz musician, whether it's the education system's flawed vocation test,
Homemaker?
It's like a mommy.
or music teachers giving her discouraging advice.
Do you think she could be a professional someday?
Oh, Lord, no.
But I'll practice every day.
Yeah, well, I'll be frank with you, Lisa, and when I say frank, I mean, devastating. You've inherited a finger condition known as stubbiness. It usually comes from the father's side.
It's no surprise that she rebels against her peers when they refuse to support her gifts. Meanwhile, Bart is finding role models in the police force who are happy to inspire him to become a cop. Plus, Skinner gives Bart a chance to act out a role of authority when he assigns him to be the school's hall monitor.
I don't know.
Oh, now you get to wear a sash.
You got yourself a narc.
All this peer support keeps Bart invested in the idea of becoming a police officer one day. At the same time, it's funny how these adults have been lecturing kids on their potential, when every teacher at the school relies way too much on a reference book to compensate for themselves.
Lisa, if you'd bothered to do the assignment, you'd know the answer is the Battle of New Orleans. I mean, Andrew Jackson.
Well, you're earning your 18 grand a year.
This is something that Lisa is happy to exploit in her rebellious phase, when she decides to steal every teacher's edition copy and hide them in her locker. When Bart discovers that Lisa was the thief, his big brother instincts kick in, and he takes the blame. While Bart was playing Hull Monitor for fun, Lisa was going rogue after being betrayed by the education system. So if adults aren't going to steer her in the right direction, then Bart will do it instead.
Bart, why'd you take the blame?
'Cause I didn't want you to wreck your life. You got the brains and the talent to go as far as you want. And when you do, I'll be right there to borrow money.
Oh, Bart.
It's a really moving ending that shows how behind their sibling rivalry, these two will always be there for each other.
Sounding good, Lise.
Marge being not proud. When an exciting and gory video game is released on console, Bart becomes obsessed with getting a copy, but it's just too expensive. So Bart finds himself resorting to shoplifting the game, and he's caught by the strict shop security, Officer Brodka. Marge worries that a style of parenting is what pushed Bart to commit his crime, so she decides to treat him with more maturity, but this just makes Bart feel less loved. This classic Christmas special is one part festive comedy and one part human drama. Sure, we get lots of funny seasonal gags that fit a Yuletide episode.
Ho, ho, ho! Here you go, little fella!
No, not for him.
Oh, I see.
But at the heart of this special is the story of a mother and son's broken bond.
Oh, great. The Tuck-In Express is right on time.
Good night.
You can tell that Bart is deeply guilty for his shoplifting incident. He may be a troublemaker, but even stealing is out of character for him. He doesn't even care about the video game anymore. All he wants now is to have his mother's attention back. My heart kind of breaks for Bart in this episode, because you can tell that he feels bad and craves motherly love. He even goes as far as borrowing Milhouse's mum to fill the void he's feeling.
And who is Warren Burke?
He used to tune our piano before we got rid of it. He grew up in Mechanicsburg.
Oh, really? Tell me I'm good.
Meanwhile, Marge puts all the blame on herself, when really Bart just lost self-control and made a mistake he regrets. It's so sad how this mother with so much love to give feels the need to hold back after re-evaluating her parenting.
He's not my little baby anymore. Maybe I mother him too much.
These two need to find trust in each other again. Marge needs to believe that her son won't make shoplifting a habit, and Bart wants to show his mum that he misses Marge's mothering. So in one of the sweetest endings of a Simpsons episode, Bart ends up secretly buying a portrait of himself as a Christmas gift for Marge. It's a sentiment that means a lot, because Bart's shoplifting crime is what ruined the Simpsons Christmas family portrait.
Oh, sweetie, this is the best present a mother could get. I love you so much, my little bitty Barty.
Mom.
At the same time though, the episode gives us an iconic guest character that Simpsons fans love, Officer Brodka, voiced by Carl Tierney. This gruff shop guard takes his job very seriously and does not mess around, but his strange mannerisms and quirks also lead to some very funny dry humor jokes that steal the episode.
That's crazy. Bart's not a shoplifter. He's just a little boy.
Oh, sure. Now he's just a little boy stealing little toys. But someday he'll be a grown man, stealing stadiums and quarries.
Marge Being Not Proud is a highly beloved Christmas special that authentically explores the cracks in a mother and son's wounded relationship. It's all handled with this earnest humanity that shows how both sides feel hurt, all while demonstrating how the Christmas season can bring them together again. Homer's enemy. Frank Grimes spends every day working hard to achieve success, but his life has continued to throw wrenches in his way. When Frank meets Homer Simpson, he's appalled that this lazy slob has found a secure life despite putting zero effort in. Frank tells Homer that they're officially enemies, so Homer tries desperately hard to convince Grimes to be his friend. Many people consider this episode to be the magnum opus of The Simpsons, and it doesn't take much to convince me to agree. It's the last great Golden Age episode, and the show hasn't made an episode that's matched it since. On the surface, Homer's Enemy is an amusing comedy about the dynamic of an uptight straight man conflicting with a happy-go-lucky idiot. We can find lots of humorous fun in seeing Homer causing an accident, only for Frank to go ballistic at his incompetence.
You idiot! You nearly drank a beaker full of sulfuric acid!
Acid, eh? Gee, That would have been stupid.
But when you dig the episode a little deeper, you'll realise that it's also a satirical deconstruction of The Simpsons as a show and the American dream itself. Frank represents the classic American hero, a working class Joe who is committed to the hustle, but despite his loyalty to capitalism, he's always lived a life of misery and poverty. He vents all his anger out on Homer, someone who has had everything handed to him.
I'm saying you're what's wrong with America, Simpson. You coast through life, you do as little as possible, and you leech off decent, hard-working people, like me.
When really, the problem lies in a flawed working hard, least easy, richest mindset, which is just a shallow philosophy designed to convince the working class to be mindless labourers for the elite. Sure, Homer is a lazy idiot, but his carefree attitude and refusal to chase the grind has led him to lead a happy life. It's a sentiment that carries into the episode's B-plot, in which Bart buys a factory, but instead of using his new business to generate profit, he turns it into a playhouse to enjoy his life in. Frank becomes so obsessed with convincing everyone that Homer's success makes for an unfair world that he never stops to point blame at Mr. Burns, the person who hired Homer and promoted him to be the plant safety inspector. The episode all comes to a crashing halt when Frank loses his mind, has a mental breakdown, and electrocutes himself to death. It's perhaps the darkest Simpsons episode ending to date, but Frank's downfall was inevitable, because he let his stress, anger, and unhappiness consume him.
I don't need to do my work, because someone else will do it for me. Do.
Hey, you okay, Grimy?
I'm better than okay. I'm Homer Simpson.
Homer's enemy might be a predictable pick for my number one, but I'm fine being yet another person to call it The Simpsons at their peak. It's an episode that puts a real-world person into Homer Simpson's world, resulting in belly-bursting laughs and harsh truths about the everyman's place in American society. So those were my picks for the best. Which classic episodes would you choose if you did this top 5 best and worst list? Let everyone know in the comments below. I've been Jambareeqi, and I want to thank everyone for supporting my channel for the past 10 years. I really do hope that my videos cheered you up in difficult times, or helped you relax after a busy day. But I also hope that I've improved as a YouTuber over the decade. I've had a history of making bad faith videos and misguided responses to criticism. So I do hope that I've grown over these 10 years, because I've honestly been trying to do better. Thank you, and cheerio folks. Howdy folks,